In this lesson, we're going to look at solving quadratic equations by finding square roots. And so here we have just a basic equation, x squared equals 4. The great thing about using the square root method is it's a little bit easier, and it's like solving just a regular equation. So we're basically just going to do inverse operations. To cancel out the x squared, all we're going to do is do the inverse operation, which would be taking the square root. So all we have to do is take the square root on both sides. And notice I've put a solution that x equals positive 2 or that x equals negative 2. And I want you to think about that. If I plug in 2 for x, isn't 2 squared positive 4? But the same thing as if I put in negative 2. Negative 2 squared is also positive 4. So that's why we're going to look at doing the positive and the negative of our solutions. So remember, when we take the square root, we're doing the positive negative. That's why when we do the quadratic formula, we also do plus or minus the square root. Here's another example. Solve 3 minus 5x squared equals negative 9. So write that problem down. Okay, so obviously the first thing we would do, just like any other regular equation, is we would subtract 3 from both sides. And then to get the x squared by itself, we would divide by negative 5. And that gives us x squared equals 12/5. And so now to undo our exponent, all we have to do is take the positive or negative, the square root of 12/5. Now I know that 12/5 is not simplified, and that would not be the best answer to write positive or negative the square root of 12/5. So I want you to take a minute and answer that in simplest radical form. Pause it and answer that in simplest radical form. Okay, here's another example. This one's a little bit different because we have an expression, we have a difference in parentheses. So we're not going to touch anything inside of the parentheses until I've taken care of the exponent and until I've taken care of the 3. So the first thing we would do here is divide by 3. That leaves us with x minus 2 squared equals 7. And so again, can't touch the x minus 2 until I've canceled out the squares. So we're simply going to take the square root of both sides. Notice we have to put positive or negative the square root of 7. And so here our equation now looks like this. And so now we would add 2 to both sides. Now you can put that plus 2 at the end, or you can put it in the front like it's stated here. And if I asked you to answer as a decimal, you would have to calculate it twice, just like we do with the quadratic formula. You would say 2 plus the square root of 7, and then 2 minus the square root of 7. Okay, so here's another example. I want you to stop the video, and I want you to work through this problem on your own for just a second. And then when you have the answer, restart the video. Here's what your first step should have been. Divide by 4. And then we have to take plus or minus the square root of 12. Now I know the square root of 12 is not simplified, so if we're answering in simplest radical form, it would actually be that, whoops, they didn't put it, x equals positive or negative 2 the square root of 3. And then obviously if we needed to change that to a decimal, we could have just calculated in the square root of 12 in our calculator. Okay, look at example number 4. Take a minute, see if you can solve that on your own. Remember to cancel out a fraction. All we have to do is multiply by the reciprocal. When you're finished with the problem, start the video back up. So we should have multiplied by 5 to begin with. Taken positive or negative the square root. Add 4 to both sides. The square root of 30 can't be simplified, so this would be answered in simplest radical form. But if we took a minute and used a calculator, we would have to do 4 plus the square root of 30 and 4 minus the square root of 30.